Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Psychedelics Today on the show, we have Brian Norman Viveros from Symposia and CryptoPsychedelic. We get a chance to talk about all sorts of great things. We start talking about the CryptoPsychedelic conference in Tulum, Mexico that happened a few months back. We get a chance to talk about technology, decentralization, various things that cryptocurrencies could impact, including psychedelic overlays. Like obviously it's acquiring drugs with Bitcoin and dark web markets and all that kind of stuff is it's coming, it's growing. It's definitely been around for years, and some people find it safer than getting involved in some sort of gang situation or dangerous street dealer situation. And where on the streets can you get a dealer's Yelp profile? In this day and age, dark webs kind of have all that. And, maybe they're not the safest thing in the world, but people have to pick what risks are worth taking for themselves. And this is just another risk that you can take. So, yeah, we talk about that kind of stuff. We talk about music industry changes that could happen as a result of cryptocurrencies and just a number of different areas around politics, crypto, psychedelics, and more. So really hope you enjoy this episode. And again, it's Brian Norman Viveros with Symposia and CryptoPsychedelic. So check him out. You're probably aware of Symposia if you're listening to our show, but if you're not, definitely go check it out. And I think that's it for now. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with me, Joe Moore, and Brian Norman Viveros. And next episode, we'll be back with one with Kyle. I promise. Take care, everybody. Enjoy. We wanted to take the time to thank our sponsor, Bluebird Botanicals. Bluebird Botanicals is an excellent CBD company based in the Boulder, Colorado region. And I actually personally know, I would say 6 or more employees at that company. And one of my good friends decided they wanted to partner with us. And I've actually known these guys for a really long time, and I really trust the products. I think I even took it in 2011, if they were around at that point. It was really early days, and I started taking a CBD product. I thought it was bootleg. It's actually legal to take across state lines. I think I flew with it across the country. Because it doesn't have THC in it, it is legal. And it's legal in all states in the U.S. except for South Dakota. And I don't believe Bluebird can currently ship internationally, though I'm sure as soon as that's possible, they'll do it. It's a great company, a great product. If you don't know too much about CBD, I suggest you dig in and check it out. It is really cool and definitely something you should check out. I've been using it. My girlfriend's been using it. Kyle has been using it. And I kind of take it right before bed. And I find it helps me slow down at the end of the day. I'm a little speedy, so it helps me chill right out. Yeah, so that's it for Bluebird. Thanks to Bluebird for sponsoring us again. I really appreciate it. If you want to try psychedelic mushrooms in a legal setting in Jamaica with us, you still have some time to sign up. We've got a retreat coming up May 16 through 23 in Jamaica, and we still have room left. Applications keep coming in, but I'm pretty sure it's not sold out yet. So if you want to check it out, mycomeditations.com, and hit the application button there. You can learn more on the site, mycomeditations.com. And if you're interested and we need some info from us, hit us up, Psychedelics Today, email at gmail.com. The trip will entail 3 mushroom sessions, 2 breathwork sessions, and a lot of kind of class time and plenty of time to relax, because we are going to be in a very beautiful place in Jamaica. So check that out, and we'd love to have you if you're interested in coming. If you want to support the show with some small regular donations, we have a Patreon site, patreon.com/psychedelics today, and you can give us a small monthly donation or donations by show. So check that out. You can give as little as $1 a month if you want to just help us out a little bit, pay the bills and keep the lights on, and just improving the quality of the show. In the near future, I think we need to buy some new microphones, and I think Kyle and I might need some new PCs to keep the editing going. So if you want to support us there, that would be lovely. Patreon.com/psychedelics today. Psychedelics Today has partnered with Daniel McQueen over at Medicinal Mindfulness on this new and very exciting project you've heard about on our show a bunch and maybe elsewhere, extended state DMT research. So the concept is to use a IV pump and keep a steady blood concentration of DMT in the bloodstream for undetermined amount of time. Rick Strassman, I think, responded that he would like to try it the first time for a few weeks or something silly like that, maybe just a week. But, I think the initial phases of the study will be maybe 20 minutes, 10 minutes, just to extend that blood concentration peak of DMT that you would get from a freebase or an insufflated dose of DMT. And it's more from a psychonaut perspective, which is interesting. It's not just for medical research. It's for our community. We want to know what happens. And you have an opportunity to participate. We have on our Teachable platform over at psychedelicstoday.teachable.com a class for sale called the DMTX Psychonaut Training. And it is the first step. If you want to be a candidate for this, you might have to really work. It's kind of like an astronaut program, like NASA grade kind of selection for participants. So check that out. Teachable is hosting our class, psychedelicstoday.teachable.com. Kyle and Daniel McQueen ran a multi-week class, and you can get the bulk of it there. And yeah, the class proceeds go to support the Psychonaut training and getting funding enough to push this through to make it legal to do in the States. So yeah, again, check that out, psychedelicstoday.teachable.com, and see if you want to pick up that class, DMTX Psychonaut Training. Finally here, if you want to support the show but can't afford to buy a t-shirt or a mug from our shop, feel free to just leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Facebook, anywhere really, Google. Tell your friends, share your favorite episodes with them, or maybe ask your significant other or parents for a seat to our class, Navigating Psychedelics, so you can keep yourself safe. So again, yeah, we'd love to have you tell your friends about the show or just plug us on your socials. Thanks again for listening and enjoy the show. Here we are, Brian Norman Riveros from Symposia, and also recently helped run or coordinate the CryptoPsychedelic conference in Tulum, Mexico. Thanks for joining, Brian.
Yeah, Joe, thank you for having me.
Hey, so I was very surprised because you guys really just rushed this thing together and it manifested super quick into a pretty interesting looking conference with all sorts of representation. Can you talk about like what was the initial impulse there to put this event on?
Yeah, it kind of, the whole thing was organic. I had interest in crypto. I was kind of looking at what was going on out there, and we found that there was a lot of buzz kind of around crypto and psychedelics anyways. There was some different events that had popped up, and Matt McKibben, he was in San Francisco, and we sort of just linked up with him, and there was already sort of an idea to do an event down in Tulum, and so we just went with it. I mean, within like a month, pretty much in a month, we put everything together. So we didn't give everybody enough time really to hear about it.
Right.
There was about 3 weeks of, working around the clock, and we had an amazing team, and everything really came together. And there was about 250 people or so, I would say, that ended up being down there.
That's pretty awesome. Did you end up renting a resort out or just get a conference space at a resort?
So it wasn't really the area in Tulum. There's not really resorts like you'd think of, a regular resort. Tulum has this stretch of beach, and it's really chaotic. There's like a lot of eco lodges. There's just, every kind of bar you can think of. There's all little, secret places, and it's really beautiful. And yeah, so we were down on the beach in Tulum at a venue that was down there, and we kind of transformed it a little bit. It was really beautiful. That's
awesome. It's nice to be able to do that. And can you explain who you said Mike McKibben, who he is?
Matt McKibben. He runs a crypto company called Decentralized. And so they do a lot of work in the space, work with different companies, work with different projects in crypto and blockchain startups. And he's also really interested in psychedelic advocacy. So he was looking for some people to help him do this event. And then we talked to him, we were like, yeah, this is exactly something that we're looking to do. We're always pretty flexible and want to do different kinds of events. So this one just made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. So a lot of people out there are going to be listening going, what the hell? All right. I keep hearing about Bitcoin. I keep hearing about blockchain. Blockchain is almost simple to explain. It's I think, kind of next gen decentralized network kind of thing. Like think Napster, but think like 20 years down the line where you can actually do it for stuff other than just file sharing. So sharing,
right?
Yeah, like decentralized ledgers. Like think like accounting that's spread all over the world. Like your books are now everywhere. Or what are some of the ways you like to kind of describe it?
It's interesting because the more you learn about it, the more metaphors you can have. I am certainly not an expert in any of it, but yeah, peer-to-peer, borderless, institutionless payment systems. Payment systems of one of the first applications. People are looking at different use cases of how you could use it. But money is going to be one of the first ones. We'll see a change in kind of how we, just like exactly what you said with music. How did that change everything? How did that change the institutions and the recording industries? So you're eventually going to see that in different sections of different institutions that are kind of taking away value, not really serving a purpose anymore when there's a technology that can replace them, right? And banks aren't necessarily providing any real value there. In fact, they're taking it away. They're devaluing currency. They're charging high fees, especially in half the world, more than half the world who's underbanked or has no access to banks. Those are the people who are going to leapfrog. Those are the people who are going to benefit the most by it, who have no access to any sort of financial institution at all. So that's going to be the biggest change, is people who are underbanked.
Right. So like people, very poor people can do this whole economy kind of pop up thing. Like you don't need a whole dollar to do transactions anymore. You can do it at like the hundredths of a dollar or like thousandths of a dollar, and have your own little economy between a bunch of like really poor people, or just, be able to transcend beyond barter and cash.
Right. And the whole concept of money is going to really transform.
Mm-hmm.
And what we think money is attached to a nation state. That's changing. So now it's going to be a borderless thing. It's going to be communities of people who may share the same values across all the world. They're going to be using these, certain currencies, and they'll be, if you think of currency as an application, there'll be different currencies for different applications, right? And it's going to take quite some time for it to fully develop. Everything that we take for granted today, 10, 15 years ago was not even, you could probably not even imagine it. It was too far. It was too far away. So it's going to change. It's going to change very fast. We're going to, in 10 years, we'll be saying, remember what it was like. Just same metaphor as a VHS tape, or going to the store for getting a CD, or even what a CD is. That's where we'll be with cryptocurrencies in 10 years or so. And I think it's going to be really bumpy as far as financial institutions, as regulators, and, as they feel more and more threatened, they're going to respond the same way with trying to lock down and control more and more. You're already seeing it with, different regulations in different places. It's a threat. It's a threat to the existing giant banks who control everything. So, it's crazy to look back when the record companies were, I remember when Napster came out. I remember I used it. Napster was amazing, and it was really far out. And eventually the record companies come along and they start suing people. They start taking people to court, fining people. Probably people went to jail for downloading songs. Then that force of decentralization, the internet comes out and allows peer-to-peer, transfer. And the record companies quickly become irrelevant. and that whole space is opened up. I think you'll see a similar thing with cryptocurrencies. It'll be very different.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the hope. That's the direction that things are going in, and it'll be bumpy getting there. But I don't think there's any going backwards. I don't think there's any going backward. There'll be there'll be a ton of the different projects that go away. They'll fail. They'll definitely fail. But there's going to be a handful that succeed, and the ones that succeed will be hugely transformational.
Yeah. So I guess another couple of use cases, like let's talk, you mentioned music. So there could be something like Spotify based on a blockchain that pays artists more fairly than something like Spotify would, or record companies would. So kind of like transcending that model, which would be really cool.
I can't wait to see those different things. I can't wait to see social media getting rebuilt, people not having to give away their information, things that are much more healthy, things that actually compensate people in the sharing economy.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be super cool.
Yeah, imagine what happens when these artists and writers and musicians, are compensated fairly finally for the first time in, I guess, ever. Well, probably in the last 100 years or so. I don't know if there was a point when they were compensated fairly, but I imagine it should come.
Yeah, I don't really know. After technology for music came about, the record companies grew out of that because now sound could be mass produced. Before that, sound wasn't. If you wanted to hear something, you went to the venue to hear it, and an artist performed, and that was it. And you probably only heard a few musicians in your lifetime. And then all of a sudden, you can now mass produce sound on a disc, and record companies grow out of that. There's cost to doing that. And so over the course of the 20th century, you have this consolidation of record companies, and you have this hierarchy that's built. And then within a very short period of time after Napster comes out, that crumbles very quickly. And then you have someone like Steve Jobs who kind of comes right in the middle there and creates iTunes, and people buy songs for $1 now. And all the record companies flock to that model. Instead of kind of re-envisioning it, they thought in the same way. We're gonna kill Napster. We're gonna kill this one. We're gonna kill this one. And they can't shut the technology down. It doesn't matter what they do. They can't shut it down. It's not how it works.
Yeah, that genie is out of the bottle, man, permanently. Like this decentralized technology is just so easy to replicate and use over different networks. And it's totally here to stay. So Kyle and I had a chat about like psychedelic uses for crypto. Obviously buying crypto anonymously, using some sort of privacy coin is really helpful. But something more like tracking credentials of some kind. So like, is somebody safe to work with kind of thing? Maybe that would be a nice method for it. Or like seed to sale in cannabis is being applied, like tracking seed to sale cannabis. And I don't know that it's
right
in practice yet, but close.
I think you're definitely going to see those to trace the history of either the purity of the substance or, where it was grown, just that the whole supply kind of chain. I haven't really looked into that too closely, but I'm aware that is a definite use case, like verifying chain of title type things, in any contract, verifying chain of title.
Yeah.
On a blockchain. So there's going to be a million different use cases. I was reading in Sierra Leone, in a city there, they did the first voting on a blockchain the other day. There was a startup, I don't know their name, but I think it was the first time it ever happened in one specific city in Sierra Leone. So that's another thing. There's going to be a million different applications that we're not even aware of. Just like with the internet at first, we didn't have no idea where it was going to go. And I think it'll be very, very similar with this. You just got to think in the long term, you got to think in the next. Look how long the internet, it's taken us 25 years to get where we are now. When you use the internet at first, you could sort of envision things. Okay, I'll maybe have this device that I carry around, or I'll be able to talk with anybody in the world over a video. It was like some futuristic concept, you know?
Right.
So I think that's where we are now. It's all about the technology and the variety of technology. It's not just like blockchain technology. There's lots of that blockchain is what has become the word that we use to kind of simplify these various technologies underneath, like proof of work and these different systems. We just call it blockchain now. But that technology, how, you know, the developers and the people who are working on it are going to be able to envision that technology in different ways, just like the internet. It's completely transformed itself. The internet was first like conceived as this as this tool to keep communications up, and you know, in the event of a nuclear war. That's not how we use it, you know. That's not how it's used now. So right. I think it's probably going to go as far as people's imaginations can take it.
Which is interesting, because you can say the same thing about psychedelics in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, I mean, they're just tools. They're just tools, and when a new tool comes on the scene, people are gonna, you know, evolve those tools, and they become different things. And then some people fear those new things, and so they say the same bullshit about them all the time, you know. And then they become a part of our lives, and they become invisible, and we don't even know we're using them anymore.
Right. Now, what were some of the more interesting things that came out of the conference? Obviously, people from both worlds, psychedelic and crypto, were talking to each other, probably for some of them the first time talking to the other community. And I imagine that was cool. But anything magical?
Yeah, it was like going on a date with a new person. Really, it was. I think that, you know, the best things that came out of it are some of the new relationships, and really seeing the potential that was there for future collaboration. I think that, to me, that was really what my personal takeaway was. That was my experience about bringing these groups together, and then kind of talking about building a strong foundation around psychedelic drug reform advocacy and education. And that's something that I think that really needs to be talked about more, and projects in that space need to grow more. I think that's something that is generally lacking out there right now. So we didn't go into this event like looking to, you know, find any answers, because there's not really many answers when you're looking at, say crypto or blockchain. It's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions of, you know, what if this, what if that, what can we do? Is this new technology something that, can we use it here? Can we use it there? Does it make sense? Can we create a cryptocurrency for this? Does that make sense? So it was a lot of questions. It was really a time to question, I think. Not really a time for answers. It's like there's this new, you know, there's this new thing on the horizon, and we don't know what it is. So we're asking questions about what is this new thing, right?
It reminds me of like the obelisk in 2001. Like,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. What is this thing? And it depends on how you interact with this thing that your understanding is formed, right? Everybody can look at the thing and think about it in a different way, and that's right. That's a really good metaphor, because that's my favorite movie ever.
Yeah, if someone has the guts enough to watch it on drugs, please go for it. Their audience, it's quite the thing.
If no one's seen that, and you gotta, the most important thing about 2001, you gotta watch it in one sitting.
Absolutely.
You cannot watch that movie in different sittings. It's one time, one experience straight through.
Right. It would make no sense like that, taking a break. Like that would be.
Yeah, you can't watch like one act and then, you know, and then move on.
Right. So the concept here, guys, is there's this obelisk on a distant planet, and humans are going to go try to figure out what it is. It seems to be.
Well, even at the beginning, I think in the first act is the most appropriate for what we're saying now, because because you have basically, you know, this tribe, and this new object is thrown into this tribe, and then the dynamics immediately change. I don't want to ruin the first scene, but
Right.
it's, that first scene is a metaphor for everything. And every time you watch it, you can come away with a new angle on that metaphor. I think, anyways. That's why every time I watch it, I'm like, man, Kubrick, like, this is a powerful scene, powerful concept in that first act.
Yeah, there's a reason he's such a well-regarded filmmaker, and I think he had a lot of this stuff going on. I'd love to know his commentary on psychedelics before he died.
There's a really interesting promotion that came out for that during. I don't think he ever really wanted to. I'm trying to think about it, but I don't think he ever really wanted to come out and say this was inspired by, my LSD trips. I think he really wanted the viewer to interpret it in their own way. And it is an extremely psychedelic movie, and every time that you watch it, you come away with a completely new experience. So, yeah, I think that's kind of how, that's like how any new tool is, right? We don't know. Every time someone new interacts with it, a new use can come up with it, right? Yeah. So I think the same, another metaphor, I think the same people who are, against drugs or for these super oppressive regulations on drugs, it's the same thing. They confuse the tool, right? That they think it's the tool that is the bad thing. They miss it. It's how you interact with it, right? And so it's the same thing with the internet. The same arguments for the internet are the same arguments for cryptocurrencies. That only the worst of the worst in society are going to use this, which is crazy. That they say, oh yeah, all the drug dealers are going to use Bitcoin. Well, what do the drug dealers use now? It's money.
Yeah, the other breakthrough invention from a couple hundred years ago.
Right? Isn't that what they use? And I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
In the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson, they used like hemp and flax script, so it was like just pretty much some alternate non-fiat currency. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, the people who have the most to lose are the ones that are going to defend their territory the most, and for everybody else, there's going to be mass adoption because it's going to help everybody else out in one way or another. One of the big things that you'll read about a lot is remittance, and it is people, say in the United States, immigrants who are sending money overseas down to South America, to Mexico, to different parts of the world. And, Western Union stands in the way there, and they have to pay high fees in order to send their money to take care of their family. And, with cryptocurrencies, they're borderless. Some of them are incredibly cheap in fees, and they're instant. Yeah. So I think that's a really, that's going to be a huge one. That's going to be a huge thing. And when you talk to people in the space, they basically say, yeah, things are going to change. Things are going to change here in the West, but things are going to change dramatically in other countries. So don't lose sight of the fact that this technology is really something that's going to change the lives of people all around the world, because the traditional banking system, the traditional banking networks actually have no way of reaching the majority of the world. But when the majority of the world now has a phone, they now become a bank. So that's going to be the big change that really happens that we might not see. It's not here. We're going to see different applications on our phone. We're going to be able to use crypto, payments and everything in everyday life very soon. But the big things, developing countries, they're really going to leapfrog over, say, the last 100 years of, development that we've had. Why would they use these institutions if those institutions are now obsolete? They're not going to.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's, why would I use a landline telephone? Like right. That kind of thing. And
yeah, I don't even know who has a landline anymore other than my grandmother.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
I remember my first apartment, I had a landline, and that was the last time. I think I might have had it for a year, but yeah, that's obsolete at this point.
Right. And the model, so there's another analogy here about a centralized versus decentralized thing. Like a landline system is highly centralized and prone to failures and issues, whereas a cell network is decentralized because you have, 8 different companies owning towers all over the place with a vested interest in serving their customers, who are kind of the bigger networks like Verizon and AT&T. So you're kind of like not necessarily fully decentralized, but substantially more decentralized than a landline system, which could also draw an analogy to something like the, I hate to say things like this, but MAPS is working towards a centralized model of approving facilitators, because that's how they figured out how they could make their research and everything work financially for them. So there's going to be this centralized group saying, yes, you can provide therapy, or no, you cannot provide therapy. Whereas that's, perhaps an outmoded model that might not work in 10 years.
Yeah, that's what's fascinating about when you start reading about decentralized systems more, and you see how resilient decentralized systems are and the benefits that come of it, and how information is easier to, information doesn't have to climb up a ladder. Information comes from all directions in the entire organization, or lack thereof, organization. It's just a decentralized thing. And I tend to think that's where we're going as far as organizations, that, the whole concept of the Dow.
Dow, like the Dow Jones Industrial Average?
No, the decentralized autonomous organization.
I've heard about it on some podcasts talking about kind of next-gen crypto systems, but I haven't really dug into it too much.
It kind of, the words kind of, are self-explanatory. It's a decentralized, autonomous corporation or organization that doesn't have any hierarchy. It's flattened it out. It's distributed the whole thing. So you can look at Bitcoin as its own form of DAO. There could be corporations that are smeared out all over the place, but you're on, they have a network, and the network is the people in the network that they interact with are basically this distributed organization that exists, everywhere and nowhere. So that's at the other extreme of the, of say the pyramid model.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anybody can participate in that. It's open. Anybody can participate in that model. You can leave that model if you want. So if you zoom forward X amount of years, you're going to see more of these companies that there's no leader, there's no hierarchy, there's no central authority. It's distributed. And
then we can apply that to governments too, right? Like this guy Dan Jeffries working in crypto is working really hard to develop. It's going to be like 20 years before the software is finished, I think, but a way for full governments to be run on blockchain with voting built in with governance, and I think even rule execution and payments of employees like that.
It's going to get weird. It's going to get very weird, and it's funny because when you're a little kid, you think that you learn, and you're supposed to. How we're kind of taught, we were taught, is that you go to school and you learn and you educate yourself for how the world is, right? And then when you get out of school, you realize what bullshit was that? The world is changing so fast, and you always got to keep up to date, because the landscape and the environment it changes so rapidly that your 20s are going to be entirely different than your 30s. A lot of the things that you interacted with are just obsolete now. You don't even use that anymore. I think really, really, I don't know. My guess is that within a decade or so, maybe a little bit longer, that, say driverless cars will be just completely normal, and we'll be explaining to our kids, one point you had to put this metal thing in as a key and you had to drive it. Like it'll be like so archaic. Yeah, we'll explain a bank account to kids. They're not going to understand that their parents had bank accounts with, these banks. It's going to be on the internet in these networks. It's going to be, I think it's going to be so different. I guess I'm an optimist with it, but I don't think if you and I grew up basically in our early childhood without the internet. I was probably 10 or 11 when I would say like 1995 is when I first got on the internet, and just, again, like, look how much that has changed since then. It was on a phone line. I'd play video games on a 28.8 or 56K modem, and you have to dial it up through the phone line. And if your parent picked up the phone, like, your game would shut off. It'd lock up and you get disconnected. What is that? You can't even. That is just as foreign from explaining that to someone now as like explaining a party line or I don't know, an 8-track, or I don't even know. This is a million of them.
Yeah. It's very interesting to think about what that future looks like, and perhaps if
it's amazing.
If we're successful in our psychedelic part of our mission, what does this whole drug war look like to them too?
Well, and that was a question that I went into this event asking is, so if it's 1992, 1993, and we're in the same situation right now, and there's a thing coming out called the internet. We don't know what the internet is. We don't know what the World Wide Web is. We don't know what emails are. We don't know how to say web addresses. We don't really know what the point of it is, other than going on. And I remember going on, like, it was like Usenet or something like that. I would go on, I'd look in the music channels. I would trade people for bootleg live concerts. And, that's what for me, that's what the use of it was. And I remember when, you'd use Alta Vista. That was the search engine at the time. Websites looked like garbage. There was just like, there'd be like all these neon things and really pixelated graphics, just like irrelevant type of stuff. The design wasn't there. The whole thing was so tremendously different. And so if you look back then, if we were doing the same thing we were doing now, you want to educate people, you want to change public perception. If we were looking, how could we use the internet? How could we use this tool to further our message? How could we change, instead of, at that time before the internet, the only way really that you were exposed to information was really top down. It was really, the networks, all the authority institutions. It came from the networks on either TV or the big newspapers or whatever, and then that trickled down. It came down from the top. They threw information down the side of the pyramid. But then as the internet starts developing, information is now moving more horizontally from person to person. And the influence of these big of the gatekeepers of the dominant networks, they had say, and that say became drastically diminished, right? So if we're looking at an extension of that technology now, how can we interact with this tool to change this giant fucking disaster drug war thing? How can we? Is there something that we can do for that? Is it a cryptocurrency? Is it how do we implement blockchain for a variety of new uses? I don't know the answers to those. Those are the things that I wanted to explore at this event and ask people that know more about it than I do. How do you change incentive structures in the drug war? That's one thing that has Bitcoin has succeeded. It changes, using game theory, it changes incentive structures, and you basically eliminate bad actors by changing the incentive in the model. So how can we do that? Can we use these new technologies to kind of change incentive structures? Can we use cryptocurrencies to just simply fund the projects if you believe in these causes? If you know that the war on drugs is one of the most devastating things in society, can we use this tool to transform that in some way, right?
In a lot of ways, this is like the opportunity I guess founding fathers of the United States were able to form this kind of new thing. It was hyper revolutionary at its time. And I guess now with blockchain, we have the ability to do something very similar, but with more information and more science than they had access to.
Right. And that's the thing right now with blockchain is the rate of innovation in, we'll just call it blockchain.
It's absurd.
In the rate of innovation is way faster than the rate of innovation was during the time of when the internet came out, because now this new generation who's working and building the tools, they have the internet now. So it's even accelerated even more. When the internet was coming out, they didn't have an already decentralized tool to work with. So the developers now already have this massively powerful decentralized tool in the internet to work with. So the rate of acceleration is much faster. If anybody has gotten into kind of crypto, you cannot keep up with what's going on. If you spend all day long, you cannot keep up with what's going on. There's too much going on. It's amazing. It's intimidating. It's super intimidating. You can only do so much. And trying to understand, first off, you want to try to understand what is this thing, understand sort of the fundamentals of what it is, and that's going to change. The more you know about it, it's going to like kind of start changing. You'll see these different possibilities in it. So it's super fascinating.
It's I hope people see it too. Like, computing power is getting cheaper and cheaper. Just about everybody in the world will have a mobile phone, probably Android, in the next, 15 years. Like, pretty much everybody will have a phone. And that means everybody's online. Everybody's able to trade crypto. Everybody's able to take every class that MIT and Harvard and whoever else, Stanford, put up. And like, the rate of total innovation is just going to accelerate like crazy once we have like nearly 7 billion people doing this stuff.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, think about now, if you look at money as a tool and you correctly look at money as an energy, a form of energy that should be flowing. When you look at a map, I'm looking at my world map right now, and you just see all these imaginary lines that exist, all these imaginary borders that exist. They're not reality. It's human beings overlaying these borders on a system, and it's not real. And within those lines, there are all these people, and these people have to use this currency that the nation produces. And the shift now is that people are not going to have to rely on the currency that the nation produces. It's going to flip. That anybody can create a currency now. Anybody can create money. So that's what's really fascinating. It's going to blow people's minds. The dollar, any dollars of any countries, it's a cultural belief. It's a cultural hallucination. They're not backed by anything. They're hyperinflationary. Just make it out of thin air for nothing, and then loan it to you for a lot.
Are you familiar with this guy, Emperor Norton?
No.
He was a guy that Robert Anton Wilson used to talk about. Thought he was hilarious. He just was in San Francisco around early to mid 1800s. Declared himself emperor of like California and Mexico, or protector of Mexico. And he, I don't know exactly what happened there, but he was able to just print his own currency, and it became an accepted local currency in San Francisco. And this was like, I don't know what the laws were like at that point. Like, could you have been jailed for that kind of thing? But, he's kind of this grandiose lunatic who kind of saw those limits and just went for it. Obviously paper money, not digital, but.
Right. I think that the 1800s in the United States, I haven't read about this for a while, but I think the 1800s were like incredibly wacky as far as money and failed banks and different attempts at money during the 1800s. But yeah, I mean, if you were to do that now, you'd be arrested. It's like, but that's not even a thing in crypto now.
Yeah, right.
It's not even a thing.
You don't even need your name on it.
And the crazy part is what it's going to do to people's concept of paying taxes. That, with Airbnb, this amazing technology comes out. And basically, so you're seeing with Airbnb, this hugely disruptive technology comes out. It allows everybody to connect with everybody else and use their home as as a source of income. It kind of changes the whole thing. And so basically the cities are just completely cut out of the picture. There's the city bylaws completely cut out of the picture. So if you in DC, I was reading in DC that DC had these bylaws, and I think this is pretty common, that if you wanted to run a bed and breakfast and you wanted to use your house for kind of exactly what Airbnb is, that you'd have to pay this annual fee. There's regulations surrounding a bed and breakfast. And when Airbnb came out, that was just first off, no one even knew about that. Who looks at the bylaws of their city now to say, oh, I can't do that. I'm going to run an Airbnb. I'm going to go get a permit to do that. That's not even a thing. That's completely not even a thing. So Airbnb just steamrolled all over all these existing regulations. Entirely ignored. And that's what people are doing in crypto right now as far as taxes. They don't give a damn about taxes, So it's going to be interesting to see how all that unfolds. Because what you have is 15-year-old kids now who are trading cryptocurrencies. And they don't know anything about taxes. I don't think any American knows anything about taxes. You can't explain it to anyone. No one knows how it works. Nobody. I don't think anybody can explain taxes or healthcare. Those are two things that are just these disaster topics that no one understands. Two really important things that are impossible to understand. So I think similar to Airbnb, we're just going to ignore all these regulations. Crypto is going to be kind of a similar thing. So it's going to be interesting how the IRS starts responding to these things. I've read that. I think the IRS went to Coinbase and demanded that Coinbase turn over the information for, everybody who bought over $20,000 of crypto.
Right.
And I think very few people actually are filing. And then you're going to have more privacy things. It's going to get weird. It's going to get really weird because we're replacing, a century plus of infrastructure and how we think things are. The model is being undone. It's going to be rebuilt.
So there's one application. I think you're right about taxes. That's very revolutionary, obviously. And our taxes as Americans immediately go to pay for the drug war and other wars that we may or may not agree with.
We have no choice of where they go. We have no choice of where they go. We're coerced into paying taxes to support these hideous things in the world that we really don't support, but then we got to look the other way. Well, great. We have a representative. Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. That's worked perfectly. Yeah, but if you could choose where your taxes went, I think a lot of people would be more likely to support. Why can't you have peer-to-peer, from the bottom up, we decide where we want our taxes? We no longer need this hierarchy and all these bureaucratic shitheads compromising with one another of where the energy is allocated. Let the people allocate the energy where they feel it should be. And I tend to think that you'd have much more productive and healthy uses of let the system heal on its own.
Right. You're kind of talking about how crypto, what you just laid out, crypto kind of lends itself to more immediate direct democracy. Obviously everybody can't vote on every issue, but we could at least send money towards issues more easily if we could somehow decentralize our tax structure.
Right, and these are the things that are going to come out of crypto and blockchain is these very different governance structures that we don't see. And the more you get into decentralization, the more you the problem becomes so apparent. It becomes so apparent in the way that everything is structured.
One of my more favorite use cases that I've been hearing about is called Orkut. It's a kind of a tokenized crypto version of Tor browser. So one of the major issues with Tor is that it costs money to run a server, and the whole network of Tor runs on these servers. The Tor network is kind of compromised by having so many FBI servers out there, just kind of monitoring. So if you, as the FBI, own enough servers, you could theoretically be tracking folks and tracking data that otherwise you would assume was anonymous. Orkut, on the other hand, actually makes a way to actually pay people for having servers. So you have a financial incentive to have more and more servers throughout the world. So probably, I think they're saying within a few years after launch, they'll be able to have way more servers and therefore way more anonymity in the next gen dark web or privacy web or whatever you want to call it.
It becomes more systemic. It becomes more horizontal probably over time.
Yeah.
And like with Napster was very centralized. It's a distributed technology that in itself was centralized. So it was very easy for record companies to identify all of that. So, in the kind of the first gen systems, they're still relying on the old world kind of model for things until they eventually innovate and kind of, and get out of that. So yeah, I don't use Tor, but that's really interesting.
Right. For a lot of folks who are not able to like connect with their local psychedelic world, like it's their only portal, right? Like, so it's kind of sucks because they're at risk. There's ways to improve your security, but these people are definitely at risk of being beat up by their government, whatever it is. What were you going to say though? You don't use it?
I've used it before. Yeah, I don't generally use it though. Probably a bad practice, but
no, not necessarily. It's kind of a shitty browser. It's kind of built on Mozilla. It works okay, but it's much slower, like 20 times slower than your normal browser because it's bouncing all over the globe. And that's kind of a big deal. Like if your web is less usable by 20 times, like that's not great.
Right.
I advise people usually use a VPN of some kind. And there's actually interesting VPNs out there where you can pay in crypto so your name's not associated with your account. So it's even harder for law enforcement to pin you down, which is nice. Yeah, that internet privacy is a big deal for me just because I'm in tech and I can kind of understand it and explain it to folks.
Right.
Yeah. And when I see people that just don't have access, it blows my mind. I'm like, shit, you need to step up. Like, let me coach you through this.
Right. And the whole model now is just about extracting your information and selling it. And now, that's really one of the driving forces in crypto right now is that you own your information. You don't just give your information away. And Facebook by the day their reputation is just eroding by the day. You can see it happening.
Yeah, I'm really curious how they're going to adapt. Like I remember
I don't think they are.
They had a big push recently about like kind of just how shitty their service has been lately, like making people feel alienated and not really feeling connected. And I think they're trying to shift their engineering efforts towards more connection with individuals as opposed to just like abstract feed stuff.
I think we're seeing the senescence of Facebook right now. I think it's been happening over the last couple of years. I think it's the slow death of Facebook. I don't see them transitioning to when there's a scalable blockchain to be able to hop on it. I think that's their big vulnerability, is that they're not going to be able to build on top of a blockchain. They're too massive to restructure, and you'll have better services like Steemit, or you'll have whoever is gearing up to be a Facebook competitor, or there'll be several of them, or there'll be more of them. Facebook will shatter into a variety of other options for people. Maybe you'll be able to, you like this social network, I like this one. Maybe there's some that like we're able to interact with one another on it. I have no idea. I don't think Facebook is going to ultimately make it. Their reputation sucks. Their whole model is anathema to the emerging consensus that's out there as far as privacy and information and advertising. And Facebook, unless they rebuild on top of a really scalable chain, they're not going to be able to incentivize people to create content. There'll be a competitor that, like Steemit, where Steemit, you get paid to create, you get paid to curate based on, the dynamics of their, they have like a collection of cryptocurrencies that they use for different things within their network. So that's going to be a lot more enticing for younger people, like, kids now who basically go online. Facebook is going to be what their parents did. That's probably the biggest, that's probably going to be the biggest killer to it, is that you never want to do what your parents did. And you repel off of that to form your own identity. And if Facebook is associated with what your parents did, no, I'm gonna use this other one, and that'll probably happen across the board. And good. No company needs to have the amount of power that Facebook has.
Yeah.
None. Zero.
Absolutely agree.
Zero. So I think we're kind of seeing the end of that. Who knows how long that happens? Because their model is based on they're a public company, and it's about paying the shareholders, appeasing them, and it's how do they get out of that feedback loop?
Mm-hmm.
They can't get out of that. I don't think they can get out of that feedback loop. And what blockchain developer wants to go work for Facebook?
No,
That's
the world's too exciting.
There's a huge demand enormous demand for developers, and those developers want to go create their own projects, or they want to build new tools. They wouldn't build new tools to bring down the giants. They don't want to be absorbed into the giants. And why would they want to go make $100,000 a year for working, or whatever they're going to pay to work for Facebook or these other companies, when they can make $100 million or whatever, $1 million, creating their own currency and building their new tools? It doesn't. And I believe that is a thing. So yeah, they're going to have a lack of resources, because I certainly wouldn't want to work for Facebook. I wouldn't want to work for Apple. Right. I would want to work for something that's new and refreshing and exciting and has ability to change things even more and disrupt things even more. That's more enticing for young people who are going to, find their way, doing their own thing, being their own entrepreneurs, not just taking the easy path. So I think all those companies have a really big problem right now. They probably sense it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, they have to see that the numbers are shifting, and yeah, they obviously have analysts going, okay, what does the future look like, and what can we do, if anything? I
heard recently that Facebook announced, I don't know, in the last couple months or something, that Facebook announced the decline. I think it was one of the first declines in new users. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they do. It's going to become uncool. What can you do to reverse becoming uncool? That's a tough one.
Yeah. It's kind of already too late in a lot of ways, but it's.
I think once they sense the problem, it's too late.
Right. I don't necessarily want to underestimate Zuckerberg, though, because he's proven himself so many times as a successful business person. You think he'll do something else?
Yeah, I think he's going to leave to do something else.
They're public, right? So he's probably beholden to all sorts of ridiculous stuff.
Oh yeah, all the vested interests who want to get their quarterly profits. The only way to get your quarterly profits is to mine your people more. Mine them for it's all it's disgustingly ad based. I can't even use Messenger anymore without seeing these giant ads on my phone. It's beyond obnoxious. It's terrible. I don't know if you've seen that. I don't know if that's rolled out for everybody.
It's getting there. I use the ad platform, so I've actually seen them try to sell me on it, but it's a little more difficult than regular ads there to like buy.
Oh yeah, if I open Messenger on my phone, and sometimes it's just like this giant ad for like Tony Robbins or something. Some bullshit from Tony Robbins or from people who I've never even heard about. I don't want to see that. I don't want to be forced to see something like that. It's just creeping up everywhere.
Well, it's going to be more and more mainstream, unless, like, I think Tony would even eventually get boxed out. So it'll be like, dishwasher detergent and Samsung ads,
Ugh.
Yeah, soon enough. But for now, it's still cheap enough where it makes sense for some people to use it. But it's, it's phasing out and people see it. Like, I probably won't be able to afford it in 3 months.
Hang on. You won't be able to afford what?
Paying for Facebook ads. It won't make financial sense in 3 or 4 months.
Right.
Unless it's super targeted.
Right. I think, yeah, I'm looking for something new in that whole thing. Because again, why would you want to pay if a lot of people aren't? If Facebook's starting to not reach the people who you're starting to reach, why would you want to pay the money to reach them? To compensate for that, they'll probably increase the price of their ads.
Well, it's a competitive landscape, right? So it's only going to increase because there's limited inventory, like eyes on page per second kind of thing. Like, that's their inventory. And there's limited eyes on page per second, especially when you go down to geographies, like certain geographies. And then when Dow or whoever comes in and wants to like advertise their laundry detergent at you or whatever like that, they'll be able to box me out because they have way more ad money to spend, and Coca-Cola, whoever.
Right.
So, I'm just saying limited, like their inventory will just, by the nature of markets, I'll be priced out.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
But there's other places like Reddit or Pinterest that are way underutilized as ad platforms, and their price per click and price per impression are way lower.
Yeah, I've been using Reddit more. I've been using Steemit more. I really like Steemit. I
just signed up for an account as we were talking.
Yeah.
You impressed me enough to do that. Kyle already has one.
Yeah, it might take a little. Sometimes it takes them a little while. It's like in the beta phase. It's still, I think, in its early stages. I know I had signed up for another account about, 3 weeks ago, and it took me 10 days or 2 weeks for them to approve it. But it's super fascinating. It's a fascinating model. And you should read about how the whole thing works. They have Steam Power, they have Steam Dollars, and there's another one. And, they work together. They have different functions. Your Steam Power has a different function than the Steam that you can trade.
Huh.
So it's really interesting when you incentivize people for creating content and for curating content, because I believe you get Steam Power because the currency inflates. So more are produced every day, and the ones that are produced are basically allocated in a certain way. But you get, if you engage with the platform, you're also compensated. It's not just like the content creators who are compensated. Money actually, because if you were just sitting there liking things every day, you just run out of all your money. But the way that it's distributed by liking stuff, I believe that you're compensated that way as well. I haven't dove really, really into it. It's still a little. Someone who's done that would be able to explain it much, much better. But it's an interesting thing. I mean, people are basically, the vast majority of people who are, say, on Instagram, they don't make anything from it, right? It's
right.
Obviously, like
you have to make it a business versus a other thing.
Yeah, there's obviously paid Instagram. There's Instagram creators who are paid by corporations or are paid by agencies to, for a variety of things, like young Instagram stars, basically, who you don't even know that they're working for an agency, and there's a can of Coke on the desk, or there's different things, or there's product placement in some way in that, and you don't even know. And so there's a slice of people who are making money on Instagram, but the vast majority of people are contributing content and are sharing content and not being compensated. So what happens when, a competitor comes about and then compensates people, and then maybe you don't have to work some shitty job when you're 16 years old, and if you want to produce something that helps people out, or say when a decentralized YouTube comes about. I know when I have a problem on a computer, I get a question or something in Photoshop or whatever. You YouTube it, and there's some 13-year-old kid who has the answer to your problem, who has 87,000 views. He answered how to do this simple thing on Photoshop, right? That'd be cool if that kid was compensated for something like that, right? So he can continue doing what he's doing instead of working some bullshit job, working at McDonald's or whatever. He created his own this new technology allowed him to create his own little business without, say, having to put ads on there or without having to ask for donations. The network itself rewards people. You get a reward for interacting with the network, for being part of the community. You're compensated. I think that is amazing. I think that is really, really cool. So it's going to be interesting in how I think social media evolves. And that's something that we are our attention is usually kind of confined to very small periods of time, and we take for granted, we accept that the way that the internet is in the big companies and apps and everything that we interact with on a daily basis, we assume that that's like how the internet's always going to be, but it's not. It changes its form very drastically. 10 years ago, I was getting a Facebook account, and I think they had just allowed people without a college ID to get on. It wasn't anything like it is now. We weren't, we take for granted that I press an app on my button on my phone and I can get anything in the world delivered to my house, today or tomorrow, or call a car, So it changes its form really fast. So I don't think we should think that the way things are right now are the way that they're going to be. So that's why, that ultimately is why I'm interested in crypto and blockchain, because it's really going to change how we live. We're going to be doing different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How can we, I think it's important. Yeah. Our life is going to change, and our already privileged life is going to get a little more privileged. But how can we use the tool to help the people who are getting fucked the most already? And that's what needs to be. I think we need to focus on that more.
Did you meet Vinay Gupta at the conference?
Yeah, I didn't talk to him too much, but he was really awesome. He was great. He's doing some cool shit.
Yeah, I've been fairly well. I wouldn't say obsessed. I was obsessed for a little while, about 3 years ago. He was on this show, London Real. I think he maybe even made it on Rogan. I forget. But he's this like disaster planning guy who got in to all these federal agencies like around the world, government agencies around the world, to help plan for disasters. And that was his full-time job. And pretty incredible. And he, years ago, talked to me about how important crypto was for refugee communities. So you could actually I guess in a lot of refugee camps, you can't have cash, real currency, which is crazy, but I kind of get it. Like you might get fights happening or something, but with cryptocurrencies, you now have like a real economy happening inside refugee camps just by this, your little smartphone, your little Nokia handheld that probably a lot of folks still have.
Right. I was reading that's like the most popular phone in the world.
The little Nokia handsets with the really light web access.
Yeah. I think that's the phone you hear about with people living in the middle of nowhere or, so far away from, urban centers, but yet they have that. They have that, and they don't have access to banking in any way, but they have a phone. And what's going to, there's a lot of competing projects right now as far as internet, kind of like lighting up the rest of the world with internet. I believe SpaceX is doing a satellite, like a satellite array. Virgin Galactic is doing a satellite array. I think they're planning to launch it next year. Facebook has got their drone program. I heard that Google has like a balloon program.
Yeah, I've read that too. Yeah.
So that's going to be really interesting when the rest of the world comes online and has the tools, of basically only the privileged urban centers. And so how is that going to transform things?
Right. It's a big deal.
What happens when, people who are just impoverished all around the world can now crowdfund? Think about that. Like, think about if we were those people and we're like, maybe we're lucky enough to have heard about this. And this is a huge opportunity for us. That's obviously more transformative than, me being able to buy a coffee using my crypto debit card.
Yeah, right.
Right. That's what we're going to be able to do. Or you're going to be able to make, $5 from posting a picture of your cat.
Oh, I can only hope.
Great.
But yeah,
but
absolutely.
These people are going to be able to, be able to change their lives in a much more impactful way. And look, I think there's also going to be the dark side. There's going to be all of that, and it's going to be all the crooks and liars and guys that create all these Ponzi schemes and take everybody else's money and target naive or vulnerable people. And that's obviously because we've been talking about like all the the good uses. But yeah, acknowledging just all of that, I think it needs to be acknowledged, as well. So anybody that's like getting into this, it's like absolutely do your own research on any of these if you're getting involved, because there's so many of them. There's so many ICOs now. You can't keep up with them. You got to really research the project that you're doing, the team that's there, and what is the area that they're attempting to solve a problem in. Is that something that is actually going to be solvable, or is the time right to solve that problem? So yeah, there's a whole can of worms, really.
Thanks again to Bluebird Botanicals for sponsoring the show. Really appreciate them. They are independently lab tested, so you can go on their site to check out the purity ratings and to see if there's any impurities that you might not want. Spoiler alert, there are not any impurities you're not going to want in there. They're a really high-end company, and I really, really trust them and appreciate what they're doing to move the future of CBD as supplement forward. Yeah, I have to be careful with the language there because DEA is always watching. Same with the FDA. But yeah, CBDs are wonderful. They're non-psychoactive, and I find them very helpful personally. Jury's still out clinically, but do some research. You owe it to yourself to at least read up on CBDs generally, and then to also read up on Bluebird more specifically. So again, if you want to join us in Jamaica, please let us know. We'd love to have you. The retreat is from May 16 through 23, a little over a month away. We are very excited and can't wait. There's going to be 3 mushroom sessions, 2 breathwork sessions, and a lot of time spent talking, community, and learning together. So definitely would love to have you. To learn more, go to michaelmeditations.com. And if you want to support us and don't have the spare funds right now, tell your friends about Psychedelics today, or listen to all our episodes. Let us know what you think. We'd love to have some feedback on that. And even better for us might be reviews on iTunes or Facebook or Google or Stitcher, or whatever podcast app you're using. We'd just love to have more feedback. And if you want to get in touch with us, the email is psychedelicstoday@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you all for listening to the show, and hope you tune in again for the next one.